I never expected that New Year's Eve would change everything. Alice and I were just settling into another night of celebration, another year together. Then Richard showed up, my old friend, now a stranger draped in dark clothes, his eyes gleaming as he looked at Alice. Something shifted in her that night. She became someone I barely recognized. Richard's smug grin, the provocative gift he sent us later, his brazen charm, all of it made me sick. But Alice didn't turn away. By the time I realized what was happening, she was gone. And the worst part? She'd gone with him. Life's big changes often sneak up on us. You might see some coming, but not all of them. My mother-in-law believed she could avoid trouble by constantly worrying, but trouble arrives no matter what, like an unexpected visitor, and you can't predict when it will come. This story starts on a Saturday night, a night meant for closeness. Alice and I got home early enough to enjoy each other's company. I turned to Alice in bed and started kissing her, enjoying our moment together. "Oh," she said, "do you have something planned?" "Maybe I do, maybe I don't." "Let's see. Oh, you're naughty. Just a moment, I'll be right back." I switched off the bedside lamps and lit a scented candle beside the bed. It smelled like sandalwood and was shaped like a star. As I sat there, it helped me remember that night. I got ready while I heard water running in the bathroom. A minute later, she came back with a washcloth and took care of me with gentle hands before setting the cloth aside and leaning close to me. "You taste good," she said, as we enjoyed a tender moment together. After a little while, she sat up and said, "Why don't you come closer?" She lay down and welcomed me. After a little time together, we put on our clothes and settled in for the night. It was New Year's Eve, just before everything changed. Tomorrow night, we'd celebrate. New Year's in Las Vegas is always special, and we had plans to enjoy a big night out with friends, planning to relive some unforgettable moments from years past. Little did I know what was truly ahead, and neither did Alice. Then Richard returned, and everything turned upside down. Before he showed up, I believe Alice and I were happy. I felt reasonably content. I loved being with her. But sometimes it seems some of us are always searching for something a little more, something beyond the usual. That's just how it is. We liked spending time together and had a nice house and yard, both of which we had worked hard to create. People often complimented us on how they looked. A few years ago, a local paper even featured our yard in a Sunday photo shoot. As for our intimacy, it had changed. We had been married for over a decade. The passion was definitely quieter than it had been years ago. There were things we used to do that we no longer talked about or pursued. It wasn't bad, though. Sometimes I would watch adult content online, but I wasn't looking for anyone else. I had no reason to think Alice was unhappy or seeing someone else. Why did we even go to the New Year's party? I usually liked parties, meeting people, having a few drinks. Alice wasn't as fond of them, or at least she seemed to be that way. I had made plenty of excuses for her over the years. She could have easily skipped the party and stayed home to watch the New Year's Eve celebrations on TV. She always enjoyed watching the ball drop in Times Square, thinking of it as the real New Year's moment. So why did she come this time? Maybe she thought I would be upset if she stayed home again, or perhaps it was because of the friends who would be there. Who knows? It's funny to think about how things happen in life. Sometimes it feels like it all connects in strange ways. One little event can lead to another. If only we hadn't seen Richard. If that had not happened, maybe everything would have turned out differently. We certainly weren't looking for him. He hadn't been much of a friend for a long time, not since he changed careers. He had moved from being a lawyer to working in the adult film industry, sort of. I might be exaggerating a bit. I ran into him a couple of years ago, and he told me, "Henry, my film won an award at Cannes." "Really?" I asked, surprised. "Yes. The Irresolution of Madame de Pompadour. Haven't you seen it?" No. I saw the review in the Times. Wasn't that the one with controversial scenes?" "Yes, exactly. The critics loved its boldness. Filming those scenes was tough, though. We did many takes." After we finished, I told the actress, Michelle Brioche, that she didn't need to get involved with anyone off set because they'd already done enough on set. Do you know what she replied? "What?" She said, "Not until I get mine, too." Richard laughed as he walked away. He even sent us a copy of the film for Hanukkah. I had to admit it was impressively made. But Alice left the room during one of the more intense scenes, so maybe it wasn't quite explicit, just close to it. What defines something as inappropriate? I guess it's when you recognize it, right? That's what it comes down to. His situation might be serious enough to handle the new federal rules. With the video, Richard sent a card offering us a free trip on a cruise to his resort island in the Caribbean, known for romantic getaways. Why? Because he used to be my best friend a long time ago, or maybe he was just trying to impress us. I told him thanks, but I couldn't go because of my wife. He runs adult clubs, websites, and a legal business in the Nevada desert. I never got an offer for a free trip there. He gives personal advice and services. All this came from a realization he had about making money and finding where he would be happiest. We lost touch when he left his wife, who had stayed with him through some tough times. She hinted at it to Alice. I think she would have stayed with him no matter what, but he did make sure she was fine after. You can see where this is headed. The classic story of my best friend and my wife. But it's more complicated. He hasn't been my best friend for a long time since he started hanging out with unusual crowds. And with Alice, was it Richard or was it her? Or was it me? It's hard to say. So there we were on the dance floor, faint sense of something in the air, the band playing loudly, the sounds of slot machines next door drowned out by the music. I wanted to leave, but Alice wanted to stay. We had to stay. We couldn't even talk except during the brief moments when the slot machines chimed. It felt like a place for younger people. My ears were ringing. I stuffed some tissue in them, and Bill offered me something that helped a bit. Then Richard showed up right as a song finished, appearing like a character from a movie, dressed in an all-black suit that seemed out of place in Vegas, but would have suited a place like Chicago. His hair was slicked back. Does everyone in the adult industry have to dress like that? It seemed so ridiculous. I doubt I was too rude in saying that, though given how many admirers he had, I guess it worked for him. I hadn't seen him in ages, but he was always the same. Always in dark clothes, always trying to take charge, always with someone new at his side. His latest companion was a blonde. Of course, she was slender and had some obvious features. She wore something similar to the dancers of the 70s, but with a short skirt instead of shorts. The skirt was really short, and it was clear that if she leaned over even a little, you'd see more than intended. When she did lean down, it was clear she had chosen to be neatly groomed. We hadn't talked yet. He was in a small room meant for smoking and socializing, while others were in the main ballroom. I wasn't sure he noticed us yet. Then he dropped something on the floor, and she bent down to pick it up, which drew attention. She was already catching eyes. Even those of us far away could see her through the doors. Alice nudged me and said, "Look who's here!" Jessica chuckled nervously. When I glanced up, Richard was looking right at us, smiling widely. But he wasn't looking at all of us. His gaze was on Alice. The others missed the moment because they were too focused on the girl. I should have sensed something was off. Things got more complicated quickly. Richard walked into the main room, leading the girl behind him. When I looked closely, I saw she was wearing a collar, and Richard was holding a leash attached to it. She followed him closely as they moved through the crowd, which parted for them, with everyone curious to see what would happen next. Even the women seemed interested, but Richard and the girl didn't seem to notice. He wore a smug look while she kept her head down, looking at the floor. I shouldn't have said anything to him. I realized that then, but he looked so full of himself and I was feeling bold. The sounds of the games mixed in my ears, making me feel like I could speak my mind, so I called out, "Hi, Richard! Where did you find your friend?" "Henry!" His voice rang out. "And the lovely Alice! Let me introduce Diane! Diane, say hello!" He put extra emphasis on lovely. Diane raised her eyes but didn't lift her head much, just enough so we could see a hint of her expression. She looked nervous. "Hello?" she said in a soft, gentle voice that reminded me of someone who might live in a quiet town. How did he get her into this situation? "I'm showing Diane the ropes," he said loudly again, glancing at Alice and me. He clearly enjoyed the attention they were getting. Alice smiled and decided to play along. "I bet you are, and teaching her a few new things too. Isn't she a bit young?" He had a smug smile that seemed to challenge everyone. Jessica let out a nervous giggle. "Oh, I'm just being nice. I'd much prefer someone more mature like you." He looked at Alice in a way that left no doubt about what he meant. "In fact, if Henry wanted to switch, I'd take you right away. Just like that. He turned to me. How about it, Henry? Sweet Diane is just the person to liven up the older guy who's been missing out for a while. What could I say? I looked like I was about to speak, but he turned back to Alice, who was staring, surprised. And you, lovely Alice, I would do anything for you. I'd cherish every moment. Her eyes grew wider. Any man who doesn't appreciate you isn't worthy. Everyone else seemed lost for words, even Bill. The silence was heavy among the sounds of the slot machines, as if we were all dazed. Jessica looked like she wanted to disappear, even though her eyes were glued to Richard. He seemed to be enjoying himself. But then the music started again. The lights dimmed, leaving only the twinkling from the chandeliers, and the music surged around us. Richard stepped up to Alice and called out loudly, "Would you like to dance, beautiful lady?" Alice stepped back quickly, nearly stumbling into someone behind her. "No!" She hesitated, clearly searching for the right response. "No, thanks. You have a date. That's fine. Henry can take Diane. He'll enjoy that. And I'll enjoy dancing with you." "No, no. Maybe another time, then." He took Diane's hand and led her to the dance floor as the bright lights flashed on. I couldn't recall if there was a real song or singer. To me, the music was just noise with a thumping beat that matched the flashing lights. I didn't remember much. I kept covering my ears, then pulling my hands down to avoid looking silly. The dance floor was packed with people, some illuminated by the lights and others hidden in shadows. The music felt overwhelming. We didn't move, just stood there. Richard was right in front of us in his flashy suit, dancing with Diane. He barely moved, just shuffling his feet while holding a leash that let Diane twirl around him, spinning in the flashing lights. Her skirt was quite short, and I noticed a few people glancing their way. It seemed to make him happy to be the center of attention, just as always. In the crowded room, people were everywhere. Some were standing, some sitting at tables, and many were watching intently. There was a strange energy in the air. Alice was staring, trying to say something to me, but it was too loud to make out her words. Suddenly, the lights went dark for a moment, and when they came back, the music had changed, becoming sharper and faster. Alice was gripping my arm, her voice urgent as she yelled into my ear, "Look!" In the pulsing flashes of light, I noticed something odd with Richard and Diane. They were at the center of everyone's attention. Richard held a leash, and somehow Diane was lowered toward the floor. It seemed like he was focused on drawing everyone's gaze to them, and Diane seemed to be following his cues. The crowd stepped back a little, forming a loose circle around them, curious but cautious. The whole scene had a tense feeling, as if everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. Alice gripped my sleeve tightly, trying to get my attention, urging me to do something, but I wasn't sure what she wanted. The crowd exchanged glances, some people reacting with shock, while others appeared amused or intrigued. Richard's focus never left Alice, as though there was something unspoken between them, a silent challenge. His movements seemed theatrical, each gesture intentional as he continued to command attention. The crowd murmured, a mixture of disbelief and fascination. Eventually, Richard raised his hand, making a show of every motion. The tension in the room finally broke as people began to disperse, muttering and exchanging looks, leaving the intense scene behind them as the night carried on. Alice was just staring now, no longer shouting or pulling at me. She was simply watching, her face tense. Then the music ended, leaving an odd, muffled feeling in my ears. The soft lights came back on, casting the room in a gentler glow. I glanced at Alice, and when I looked back, Richard and Diane had vanished into the crowd. I could catch a glimpse of Richard's head moving toward the gambling area. That moment set the tone for the evening. Alice was shaken, muttering things like, "That creep," and "that jerk," under her breath. She was angry, especially when people tried to laugh it off or make light of it. "None of you even tried to stop him," she said, clearly frustrated. "Why didn't security step in?" But this was Las Vegas. People often let things slide, especially around money and spectacle. Still, that explanation didn't sit right with her. Meanwhile, Bill put his arm around Jessica, joking that he'd make her behave when they got home. Jessica laughed softly, nestling against him, her usual timid self. The moment passed, as moments like these often do in places like Vegas, where people quickly move on to the next thing. The initial shock faded, and I thought the strange energy of the night might be over. We stayed at the casino until midnight, welcoming the new year with a happy buzz. It was during a slow dance with Alice that I sensed something different in her mood. She seemed closer, more connected, holding me tight as the music played. We shared a kiss, feeling the excitement of the new year. Around 2 in the morning, we decided to walk along the strip and watch the famous fountains. It was packed with people, dark enough that it felt like we had some privacy despite the crowd. Alice leaned into me as we admired the fountains, the music playing softly in the background. The city lights flickered around us, creating a surreal atmosphere, and for a while we were just a part of it, enjoying the night and each other's company. As we continued walking, Alice nudged me and pointed to a secluded area where a couple was huddled close, lost in their own world. She leaned over and whispered, "Would you like me to be a little adventurous?" I laughed, realizing it was just the thrill of the night talking. She was playfully caught up in the energy, but we both knew it was all in good fun. That was as far as it went, a light-hearted end to an intense night. The fact that she even hinted at something playful caught me by surprise. "Let's go home," I said. And so we did. We went home and shared a quiet evening together, just enjoying each other's company. It was the second night in a row we spent close like that, which didn't happen often. The days moved on, the new year started, and life seemed normal, until one day things shifted unexpectedly. I couldn't pinpoint what it was, but between a lunchtime phone call and my return home that evening, something had changed. When I walked in the door, Alice felt distant, as though a wall had gone up between us. "Hi, honey, I'm home," I called out, expecting our usual light-hearted chatter, but she just kept chopping lettuce, barely acknowledging me. I leaned in to give her a quick kiss, but she hardly reacted. "Hello?" I asked, a bit worried. "Oh, I'm sorry, Henry," she replied, her voice tired. "I'll have dinner ready in about half an hour. Why don't you watch the news?" She didn't look at me, her eyes shifting to the cabinets, then the fridge, anywhere but at me. Her voice had that tone, the one that said, "I'm upset, but you have to figure out why." I racked my brain, wondering what I might have done. This wasn't like us. We usually laughed and talked even when we disagreed. But now, there was a strange distance, like she was troubled by something she wouldn't share. Dinner was quiet, and Alice left the table early, excusing herself while the news played. She seemed upset, though I couldn't tell why. I cleared the dishes alone, lost in thought, wondering how to make things right. Then, unexpectedly, she came back into the room, wrapping her arms around me in a tight hug. I nearly dropped the plate I was holding. One moment I was looking out the window, feeling unsure, and the next, she was holding me as if afraid I might slip away. "I'm sorry, honey," she said, her voice softer. "I'm just really tired. Let's go to bed early tonight, okay?" That night she seemed more at ease, almost like her old self. She came over carrying a candle, and we settled in together, just enjoying the quiet comfort of being close. It felt nice, familiar, and reassuring. Our connection felt strong again, reminding me of how close we could be and how much that meant. We both needed that quiet moment, just us, as though the past tension had dissolved, leaving only the simple warmth of being together. I gently brushed my hand along her thigh, creating soft chills. Her skin was warm and smooth, and she smiled as I gave her light kisses down each side. We were wrapped up in each other, just appreciating the closeness, and I could see the comfort and joy in her eyes. It had been a while since we'd had a moment like this, and it reminded me of what I loved about being together. Alice held me close, her hand in my hair, and I could tell she was happy. She looked down at me, her eyes warm and soft. We shared a quiet, tender moment, and I knew we both felt connected. I could see how much she enjoyed it, and her peaceful smile told me everything. She closed her eyes, breathing deeply, fully relaxed and content. When she looked back at me, she smiled again. "Please, just stay close," she said, holding my hand. I felt like we were closer than ever, and any worries from before seemed to melt away. The next evening, Alice came home from work with the same warmth, greeting me with a tight hug. I was making dinner, and she surprised me with little kisses and "I love you" whispered throughout the night. Her cheerful energy filled the room, and we spent a relaxed evening together, laughing and chatting as if any tension had simply disappeared. Later, as we were getting ready for bed, I playfully reached out to her, making her laugh. "You've got something in mind, don't you?" she teased. Just making sure you're in a good mood, I replied with a grin. You're such a tease, she said, smiling. As we settled in for the night, the soft light from the candle filled the room, casting gentle shadows on the ceiling. Alice joined me, wearing a lovely satin robe she'd pulled from the back of the closet. I couldn't help but smile at the familiar, cozy sight, feeling thankful for this quiet, joyful moment between us. Look at you, I said with a chuckle. You look perfect. She laughed, rolling her eyes playfully. Always the charmer, she said, settling in beside me with a content sigh. It was a peaceful, tender night, and we drifted off, simply grateful to be together. Have you lost it? She was starting to take off her clothes. I want more of what we had last night. Oh, well, we might have some more. And she did. I made her feel good again. It was just like the night before, and I watched her enjoy it. But when it was over, she didn't ask for anything more. Let me do something for you, I said, and I laid down. She started to touch me gently, making me feel good in a way that was almost too much. I wanted to reach out and touch her too, but she knelt between my legs, so I couldn't. She kept going for a while and then used her mouth. It felt so nice, and I could hardly handle it. I'm getting close, I told her. She paused and said, just relax. So I laid back and let her continue until I was done. She got a warm, wet cloth while I caught my breath and cleaned me up. We were together like this for a third night in a row. But the next afternoon, she seemed distant and moody, just like the first day we met. I wondered what was wrong. I'm just tired, she said. I thought it would pass like before, but that night was different. She hardly spoke, and I barely got a kiss before bed. Then, the next evening, she surprised me again. She came out while I was watching TV, opened my pants, and assisted me. She hadn't done things like this before, and it caught me off guard. She didn't pull away when it was over. Instead, she stayed close. I was confused, but happy. What had changed? Then things got strange. When she finished, she walked away, leaving me behind. I tried to reach out to her later, but she didn't respond. It was as if I was back in her bad books. Then, as you might expect, she became permanently distant. I mean, I thought it would last forever, but it was really only a few days until she left me. There were few words between us, no intimacy, and she spent a lot of time reading in the bedroom or using her computer. She was often not home, especially because she had to work late at the office a couple of times and needed to go shopping alone on the weekends. I tried to keep myself busy to avoid thinking about why things felt so off between us, especially after that night we shared. It all seemed confusing. I felt lost, wishing that was the worst of it. But things did get worse. On Monday, when I got home, the place was empty. Her car was gone. That was unusual for Alice. At first I thought maybe she just went out for groceries, but she hadn't left a note. There were no messages. I walked around the house, checking every room. Everything seemed normal, but Alice was missing. I called her cell phone, but got her voicemail. Alice, where are you? Call home, please. I tried contacting her office, but it was already closed for the day. By 6:30, then 7, there was still no sign of Alice. I stared out the window, paced around, and checked for a note again. I kept thinking that maybe I should call the police. Perhaps there was an accident or something else. The thought began to bother me. I sensed that something was wrong, and it might be about me. My chest felt tight, and a strange feeling crept down my arms. Have you ever felt that way? I wished there had just been an accident. Oh, Alice, what's going on? Where are you? Had she left me? Did I mess things up so badly that I didn't even realize it? I felt confused. Maybe I should talk to her sister first to see if she knew where Alice was. How would I explain it? Hi, Deb, I can't find Alice. Did she leave me? It was awkward, but I felt I needed to do something. I thought about calling the police again, but wait, if she had left, she would have taken a bag. I dashed to the bedroom closet. A suitcase was missing, and then it hit me Alice was really gone. It was time to call Deb, maybe even Jessica. What was happening? Was that night we shared some sort of way for her to say goodbye? Just then, the phone rang. Alice? Hello, Henry? Richard's voice boomed on the line. I can't talk right now, Richard. I'm waiting for a call. Of course, from Alice. She's right here. I didn't know how to respond. I couldn't believe it. Was Alice really with Richard? I was completely confused. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, staring at a picture nearby, trying to make sense of it all. Finally, I managed to say, "Put her on." "In a moment, Henry. Just a moment." "She'll find it hard to talk to you, so I said I would speak with you first. Alice is with me and she is staying here. She's my partner now. You will need to accept that." His voice was cheerful and friendly as always. "What is happening? Let me talk to my wife right now." "Of course, Henry. But please try to be calm. This is difficult for her and she is just looking for some joy in her tough life." There was a crackling sound as he passed the phone to Alice. "Henry, I'm sorry. I couldn't tell you, but I had to leave. I felt trapped. I couldn't handle it anymore." "What do you mean? What is going on? I don't understand, Alice. I love you. Please come home so we can talk." "No, I can't come back. I needed to start a new chapter. Please keep your distance." The line went silent. Short sentences followed one another like footsteps fading away. But I still didn't understand. She was unhappy. She wanted to leave. Why now? Things had been cold lately. Just a week ago, she loved me. What had changed? What caused her unhappiness? All of Richard's phone numbers are private. I tried the ones I knew, but no one answered, so I left messages everywhere. "Richard, I need to talk to Alice. Please have her call me or stop by or do anything. Richard, please, we have to talk. I need to know." I called Deb. "Henry," she said firmly, "I don't know what's happening with you two. She told me she was making a change. Just wait. It was only today. What did you do? What had I done?" I called Jessica. Bill picked up. "What happened, Henry? I can't believe Alice would just leave like that." "Some women might, but not her." "No, Jessica didn't know anything at all. You would contact everyone you could if she were yours, if that was all you could do in the quiet of the night, reaching out to people you barely knew to ask if they had any news, if they could tell you anything. So soon our whole world knew. She went with him? He's well known. Yes, and yes, she did. At least no one asked me what I did to deserve this. I had trouble remembering everything from that night and the following days. I was too anxious to think clearly. I believe it was around midnight when I decided to drive to Richard's place. It's a private community of one, surrounded by trees that could thrive in any climate. I had the security guard at the gate call the house. He spoke for a moment, looking at me now and then as if I might cause trouble. "I'm sorry, sir. He's staying somewhere else tonight. The staff doesn't know when he will come back." I asked the natural question and got the expected answer. "No, sir. We cannot share his location." What was happening with Alice while I was running in circles? He had her all to himself, didn't he? I dozed off on the couch, waiting for a call that never came. I drove to Richard's office early in the morning when everything was quiet. I waited in my car until people started to arrive. At 9, I called Alice's office and spoke to her assistant. I was shocked to learn that she had quit the week before without giving notice. So she was changing her life, cutting off everyone, including me. I couldn't believe I was the cause of this. She could have reached out to Deb, found a new place, or sought help. It was all about him. Just him. That terrible man. A dark limousine pulled into Richard's parking spot. I jumped out of my car and ran to it without even closing my door. I shouldn't have rushed. The passenger window rolled down and I saw a lawyer. "Where is he? I need to see him." "As you can see, Mr. Moriarty is not here. Also, you are not welcome here. If you do not leave, we will have to ask you to go." "But he has my wife. He took her away." "That is a matter between you and your spouse, not Mr. Moriarty." I looked around and spotted 2 large but polite men prepared to escort me away. A private investigator I had used once told me that people always leave traces. Richard didn't even try to hide. He had the means to stay out of sight. My investigator found 2 other addresses, 3 more phone numbers, registrations for 4 cars, 2 work locations, and everything else I needed. I drove to the first address, another gated home. Those same 2 men were waiting for me again. They followed me as I went to find the 3rd address and then to Richard's other workplace where 2 more men greeted me. I returned home and started calling all his numbers, leaving messages everywhere. I called his offices repeatedly until his assistants stopped answering. Of course, they had caller ID. At 2 p.m., I decided to cancel my appointments for the week. I parked a few blocks from one of Richard's estates and began searching for a way in. Within 5 minutes, the same large men appeared. This time, they grabbed me and pushed me back to my car. "Listen," one of them said. "Stay away from Mr. Moriarty or you'll regret it." Not as polite this time. I finally saw Richard when he came to visit me a few days later. I was sitting in the living room staring at a wall, feeling lost. Alice, my wife, my partner, was gone without warning, and it was with that man. I jumped when the doorbell rang. There he was with the two polite bodyguards, one of whom stood partway between us. "Henry!" He spoke to me in his usual warm voice. "I hear you've been looking for me. Where is Alice?" "She's fine, Henry." "Where is she? You took her. I need to talk to her." "She moved on. It happens. Accept it, Henry. Find someone else. There are other people out there." "What do you mean? What have you done with her?" I wanted to confront him. At that moment, my dislike for him grew even stronger. "Oh, you really don't want to know, Henry. I've had my time with her. Let's just say it was creative. You probably wouldn't understand what she wanted." I looked at him, wondering if I could take action before he got the chance to stop me. "What did you do? How did this happen?" Richard seemed a bit bored. "Look, Henry, I won her over, all right? I showed her things she didn't know she wanted, and it worked." "How?" "Henry, I can't just tell you everything. Let me put it this way. Many women can be won over if you know how to approach them. Alice was willing. Most men think they need to be gentle and understanding. That's not really what works. But that's not what many women truly want. Some do, but most want someone confident and assertive. They look for a man who is smart, strong, and capable. He needs to be a leader." He emphasized the word leader, dragging it out. They won't admit it. They think they should be independent, but it's true. Once they commit to someone, many of them are willing to follow his lead. They often align their feelings with his. Many women who try new things do so to please their partners. This goes beyond just relationships. It's a pattern. If he's in charge, that's often where it leads. That's why some remain with harmful partners. They can't imagine life apart from him and will do anything to keep that connection. And Alice. You want to know how I got through to her, don't you? It was easy. I won her over during calls. After just a couple of conversations, I knew I had her. You wouldn't believe how intrigued some can be, even if they try to act tough. You wouldn't understand that, though. You've never really approached a woman like that. He finally revealed something relevant. "She never told you I called, did she?" "He called?" "Of course. Probably the first day, soon after lunch." Things started to make sense. Finally, I spoke. "And she talked to you?" "I can't believe it." "Believe it." He chuckled. "She has always been curious about me, but she hid it behind a tough front. I thought it was real." Richard laughed again. "I'm never misled by what I see," he said. "She thought she should dislike me, but instead, I became someone she dreamed about. I could offer her many things. I became the man she imagined. I'm sure after my first call, she was wondering what it would be like to be close to me. Maybe even before that, after the New Year's event. That's how these feelings develop, Henry. Don't think women only want the fun part. They enjoy that, but first they want the man. They commit to him in their minds and then start wanting to be with him. And they enjoy the experience." His beeper rang. He took it out and glanced at it. "I have to go, Henry. Just so you know, this was just a friendly call. You should give Alice space. She doesn't want to see you, and I wouldn't want things to become awkward. Who knows? Maybe one day we can all get along again. For now, if you need to leave a message, call this number only." One of the polite young men gave me a business card, then they left. The next day, a CD arrived. The doorbell rang again. It usually meant bad news. This time, it was a courier who delivered it personally. What would I do with it? I went right to a CD player and put it in. It was a recording of Richard's first call to Alice. It was his way of showing off. It confirmed that everything he said was true. Richard had charmed Alice just as he claimed. He was honest, I thought. He might be one of the most honest people I knew. I still have the CD, stored carefully. I even copied the text onto my computer so I could listen whenever I wanted, even if it was hard to hear. Here's what I heard. "Hello? Hello, lovely Alice. This is Richard. And to what do we owe this call? Henry isn't home right now? No problem. I prefer talking to you. You're much more interesting." "Well, I don't find you interesting. I don't enjoy those kinds of power games." "Power games? The other night? Oh, please, Alice. Do you really think I forced anyone into anything?" "I'm sure she enjoys it, especially in front of a crowd." Of course she does. Oh, dear Alice, it was part of the fun. Couldn't you see how excited she was? Everything was planned out in advance so she could experience something she had only imagined. I thought you recognized that. I saw it in your eyes. What really moves people has a lot of fantasy involved, you know. And New Year's Eve really stirred her feelings. Oh, I'm sure it did. And what about you? A typical day at work. I shape my life around dreams. You know that. It has brought me wealth. It has given me freedom. And people seek me out. Maybe some women find you interesting, Dick, but not me. That New Year's scene was more than just a performance. Don't be so hard on yourself, dear Alice. You find me more fascinating than you admit, and I think you are quite charming too. But it was more than a performance. It was a scenario. She agreed to the terms before we began, the terms of the dream. She was expected to keep her part. If not, if it was simply a game, she wouldn't have felt so deeply engaged. She needed to believe I could bring her dream to life. If you want, I could ask her to explain it to you. You are so full of yourself. She was done with the playful banter. On the tape, Richard bursts into a hearty laugh, sounding carefree. He replies, "Well, yes, to some extent." He laughs again. "But I'm not so full of myself to think any lady would instantly find me appealing. Things are much more complicated than that." He laughs again. "Oh, you only create dreams? I thought you could do anything in a dream." She meant her words as a clever remark, but he wasn't deterred at all. "Not at all. Good dreams need imagination and attention to details, but they also require a lot of effort. That's why many dreams never go anywhere. One must master them, explore them, figure out realistic paths and results, and handle every detail. It takes all of this to turn a dream into something more than just a wishful thought." Alice stays quiet. Silence stretches out on the tape. "You seem quiet, Alice. Why not share a dream? With some thought, it can grow." Finally, she speaks, her tone softer, losing the playful challenge. "I think I should go now, Richard. I'm a happily married woman. I'm not looking for your games." "No, of course not, Alice." Richard's voice becomes softer and lower. "I never implied otherwise. I apologize. I'm not that bold, but I believe you do have dreams, ones you don't mention. You share moments in familiar ways, at expected times. And perhaps you think of your dreams when you're sharing those moments, maybe even before. They might be what sparks your excitement in the first place. They are your private thoughts, not even for Henry." A short silence. He keeps the moment brief. "Tell me I'm wrong, Alice. Be honest." She finally responds, sounding weary. "Everyone has dreams. They add interest, but I'm certainly not sharing mine." "Of course not, Alice. I apologize once more. I'm just sharing what I do. I help people develop their dreams, and I charge for that service. I charge quite a lot. I'm here to help people see that there's more to life, and it's true. After a while, they often return to me and are willing to pay more to explore their dreams or create new ones. There's always room for more. Fantasies make life exciting, especially for those who think deeply. I help people discover this, and it's valuable to them, so they pay me well." In this moment, she tries to make a joke, her laughter feeling slightly forced. "I don't know why I let you talk like this. Like I said, I'm not going to be one of your fantasy girls." He laughs genuinely. "And still, here you are, chatting with me when you could have ended the call any time." Another chuckle follows, then he pretends to sound sad. "I guess I'll have to go off with just my own little thoughts of you." She laughs again, but it's still a bit forced. "Yes, I suppose so." There's a pause. "But I don't like you thinking about me without my consent. But as you mentioned, everyone has their own dreams. I'm just honest about mine. That's why I'm good at this. It's my work, and I'm not embarrassed about it." He shifts to a more serious tone. "They belong to me, and I don't need anyone's permission. The poet Goethe once wrote, 'If I love you, what is it to you?'" He lets the silence linger, letting her feel the weight of his words. It feels like a long wait, but it's only about 5 seconds before she responds. I'm not sure about your thoughts." Her voice feels different now. She isn't angry or upset. "I don't need your approval, Alice." Again, she pauses. "Should I be worried about what's on your mind?" He stretches the silence again, showing his calm. "You said you didn't want to know. Well, I guess I don't know." She sounds uneasy. "Maybe you should share. I think. I think it would be good if you told me." Another moment of silence fills the air. "Richard?" A brief pause follows. "So, do you want to know something I've thought about?" "Yes, no, but I'm unsure. You brought it up, not me. And you're curious." "I'm a bit concerned." "All right, I'll share one little thought, just a small one." Hesitation hangs in the air. "Okay. Well," he takes his time as if he's savoring each word. "In this one, I imagine us in a cozy setting." Another pause arrives. "Oh, it's uncertain whether that's surprise or a gentle acknowledgement. Only in this scenario, the atmosphere is quite relaxed." "Oh, I see. A common scenario." She sounds relieved, thinking it's simple. "Not at all!" He joked about how a woman like her might catch him off guard at just the wrong moment, and that would not be good. He laughed, but went on. "This is really for you. It means you can't control what happens or how long it lasts. You will feel a mix of being out of control and excited. In the story, I imagine I'm close to you, making everything last just a little longer." Alice stayed quiet. "How was that for a little part of a story, Alice?" Finally, she spoke up. "If the woman in your story doesn't want you to do that, can she simply tell you?" "No, she can't." "Why not?" "Because I make sure she can't. If you say anything at all, you know I won't listen, so you have to accept it. I'm working to please you. You feel the warmth and my closeness." There was a pause, and I could imagine her thinking hard about her next words. When she spoke again, her voice was soft. "So what do you get from this story if you're focused on her?" "I will have my turn eventually, and in the meantime, I get to be with you, Alice, in so many ways. I feel you and I see you. Did you know you close your eyes when you're really into it?" Alice didn't reply. "And I enjoy the closeness. It feels special. There is something nice about your presence when you are moved. I can hear everything, each sound, each breath. You respond without thinking as the moments pass." Finally, Alice interrupted, sounding urgent. "Richard, I need to go. I'm sorry." "Of course, Alice, I want to call you again." "I don't think that's a good idea. I'm sorry." "Can I call you again in a few days?" "I have to hang up. Please tell me I can call you. I must go. Say it. I have to go." She sounded very anxious. "Just say it. Some other time. Give me a day, a time. Not before Thursday, in the afternoon. I'll call you then." There was a click, and the recording ended. And that was all it took? How could he change her mind so quickly? I listened again and could hear when he first caught her attention. At first, she resisted, but as he unfolded his story, it drew her in. You could hear it in her voice. She didn't want it, but she started to want it. It surprised her how much she craved it. When she tried to end the conversation, she still agreed to a time for him to call again. A time on a Thursday afternoon when I was never home. It was so simple for him, as if he barely tried. I called the number on his card. "The gift you sent arrived, so you had fun charming my wife. But you called her a bad person. Was that what made it enjoyable? Are you going to let her go now that you've had your fun? I need to speak with her. Right now." I left a message for Richard again. My words felt lost. He was really good at this. So very good. How could a man turn her against me in just those few minutes on the phone? He felt like the worst kind of villain. Maybe I should admire his skills instead. What was Alice thinking after our call? What did she think when I came home? What about when we were close together and I was showing her affection? Was she counting the days until Thursday afternoon, when she would be alone again, when he might call? Was she telling herself she was foolish, trying to convince herself that being with me could be as exciting as what he promised? Was she trying not to think about him? Or was she imagining that my affection was from him? And what about the next call? Did her heart race when the phone rang? She probably wished he wouldn't call, yet wanted it at the same time. I could picture every moment, her surprised pause at the first ring, a breath taken in, her slow walk to the phone, her hand hovering above it, the quick grab before the voicemail could start, an almost breathless, "Hello?" "Hello, dear Alice, I knew you would answer." Was she scared to pick it up? Something changed in her before the call ended, maybe even before it started. It had to be after that time when she was very close to me, either before or after her late nights at work. Maybe someday I'd hear that conversation too. I got a call, but it wasn't from Richard this time. It was my private investigator wanting to meet but not bringing good news. I realized my mind was divided. I felt like a failure. Alice was gone. But she would come back if I could speak with her alone. She had to. I focused on what I had just heard, and at that moment, Mickey was talking. It was time to plan. He suggested meeting in the parking lot at the museum. "Is there a reason for that?" I asked. It was convenient, so that's where we agreed to meet. "Why couldn't we just talk on the phone, Mickey?" "He might be listening." "Listening. He has money, and he's using people to keep you from her. It makes sense to be careful in my line of work." That was something else to think about. Anyway, Henry, getting to any of Moriarty's places seems impossible unless you're willing to do some really risky things with dangerous people for a lot of money. And you still might not win, or you could even end up in trouble. Yeah. So if you want someone to help find Alice, I suggest you contact the police. For an adult who has run away? Yes, because no one has really heard from her, and if you say he took her, they might feel they have to check in on her. He won't want to cause them extra work if he can avoid it. I think. Probably not. Well, I'm not sure, but it can't hurt. I almost smiled for the first time since Alice disappeared. Who should I reach out to? I have a friend. He'll want a picture. Other than that, I can keep an eye on things if you want, but it will cost a bit. I can keep looking for more places. I'll let you know if I see them out. When I got home, I noticed Richard had called back. Yes, Henry, I enjoyed having little Alice around. It was amusing leading her into my world. She seemed to enjoy it too, didn't she? Isn't temptation like that? And yes, her being difficult made it more entertaining. But she won't be difficult anymore. No, she's very calm now. You wouldn't believe how she has changed. I plan to keep enjoying her company. Bye for now. That night, I dreamed of Alice. She was lying on a bed and I could see signs of her confusion. I felt so frustrated that I couldn't reach her. I was on the floor, unable to move closer. I could see her, but in the dream, it felt like I was blind. I could hear her soft sounds while I struggled to reach her, but I couldn't get there. Days went by and Alice felt more and more distant. I wondered how she had changed. What did she look like now? Did she ever think of me at all? The following week, there was another voicemail from Richard. "Hello, Henry. So you had to call the police, did you? Do you know how much trouble this could bring? We will be polite when the officer comes, but I might have to reprimand Alice for it." I called back right away. "What have you done to her? Has she been hurt?" He answered the call. Henry, why do you think I would harm sweet Alice?" He laughed easily. "Let her speak for herself. Trust me, she's fine, just fine, but she can't talk right now. I suppose I should say she's upset." That laugh again. "What's wrong?" "Oh, nothing serious. She's just feeling down for a while as a result of some discipline." "What do you mean by that?" "You can read about similar things. I didn't make it up. It comes from an old researcher. He studied animals by keeping them in small, bare spaces. He observed how it affected them mentally, and it was quite damaging." "What have you done to my wife?" "Nothing, Henry. Really nothing. Don't worry yourself. She's not in a dangerous situation. I just made it so she can't see or move around much." "What did you do?" "Don't worry, Henry." "What did you say?" "Oh, she's doing fine. Well, not exactly happy right now. She might be feeling pretty down." "Richard?" "She's probably feeling sad and talking to herself, asking me to let her out. Come on." "But I'll change things soon and make her feel better. A little shift in how she sits and some gentle touches. She'll appreciate what I do for her before the night ends. You should see her, Henry. She lights up like you wouldn't believe, and it makes her so much easier to deal with. Well, have a good evening." He hung up. I tried calling him again and again that evening, but he didn't answer or call back. No, he just did what he wanted, while I called without any luck. I also called the police officer Mickey mentioned. I called every day, leaving messages about Richard's actions. The officer was very polite. I thought they must all go to the same politeness training. I bought a phone recorder to keep myself busy. It took another week for the officer to come by. Standing at my door, "What news do you have? Are there people who want to leave their partners?" I knew the answer. When the bell rang, it usually meant bad news. "Mr. Jekyll, I followed up on your calls. I went to Mr. Moriarty's house and talked with Richard and Alice. For now, that's all I can do. I suggest you let this go." "What do you mean?" "I went as a favor to Mickey Edwards, an old friend of mine, but there's no crime here. Your wife is staying with Mr. Moriarty by her own choice and doesn't plan on coming back. That's the end of my investigation." "How is she?" "What do you mean? How is she doing?" "She's okay. She looked fine." "And you're certain it's her?" "Mr. Jekyll." He handed me a photo. "That's her. She's lost some weight and her hair is shorter, but she looked fine." "Did you speak with her alone?" "No. They were together, but we spoke. Nothing seemed off, no more than usual." "What do you mean, usual?" He looked at me with that serious cop expression that always makes me uneasy. Then he sighed. "Look, this isn't directly related, but a while back, a woman living with him came to file a complaint. She said he had hurt her and locked her up. There were marks on her. We looked into it. But then, suddenly, her lawyer talked to his lawyer, and she dropped her complaint. Said it was a misunderstanding. They ended up on good terms. She won't testify against him. There's a settlement, but he apparently paid her well. She got married and moved away. That's all there is to it." "I didn't know about that." "It wasn't in the news. If it weren't for that case, I wouldn't have looked into it, even for Mickey. Turns out there's nothing illegal here." "She didn't have any signs of being hurt? Marks?" "No, none that showed. Look, not everything is easy to see. She wore a long-sleeved shirt that was buttoned up. Buttoned at the neck, too." A strange look crossed his face and passed quickly. "Anyway, I can't ask her to show me everything. It wouldn't change anything even if she did have marks or if I could prove he caused them." "Why not?" "Because they are adults. This is Las Vegas. There's a huge community here where people engage in all sorts of activities. Many women are part of it, and many of them live normal lives during the day. People can make their own choices." "And that's all?" "That's all. One thing did bother me. He seemed controlling. I see that often in this job, and I know what to look for. He held her hand and had his arm around her the whole time. He kept answering her questions for her. That's it. It wasn't too unusual, and she didn't seem scared. She said she was happy. Trust me, let it go. If I were you, I'd think about getting a divorce." How long had it been since Alice was out of my life? How many weeks? What do you do when love turns into obsession? How long since I slept through the night? I kept dreaming about her. The same dream over and over, waking up thinking I heard her. Chasing shadows. Trying to focus on work. I was always tired. It was time to let this go and find myself again. It was a last resort when I asked Mickey to find the showgirl. But Mickey couldn't find her. "What do you mean you can't find her? You said anyone could be found." "I may have been a little too confident. It doesn't mean I won't someday find her, but her trail is quite hidden, and I'm still trying to learn her real name." "Her real name?" "I only have her stage name for now." "Which is?" "Oh boy, Bambi McPherson." "No, yes, Bambi. Yeah, a dancer. A showgirl." "Who's gone? Let me ask you something. Are you sure she's even alive?" What would finding her change? Richard had mistreated another woman, so what? He was wealthy. He probably had done this to many, and he seemed to settle things when called out. What would this woman tell us? He had power over me. He controlled me. Maybe he had mistreated her too. Who could say? But she left him and got a settlement. Alice could always leave when she no longer wanted to stay. Unless his behavior got worse over time. Yes, that was a possibility. What if hurting women and controlling them wasn't enough for him anymore? What if Alice was the one he decided to push too far? Would anyone ever know? Would someone ever find parts of a dried-out body in the desert? When Mickey found Bambi, I jumped on it. He had her name, an address, and more. She lived in Sacramento, was married to a doctor, and her name was now Eleanor Friedman. Mickey even got her home phone number, but she wouldn't talk to me. When I called and mentioned Richard, she cut me off. She didn't know him. Then click. I flew to Sacramento. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I was tired. Oh, Jesus. What would it be like to sleep forever without dreams? Should I give up? Alice was gone for her own reasons. Still, the guard at the gate called Mrs. Friedman's house. Same old story. When he mentioned my name, they said she wasn't home. I asked him to call again, saying it was about my wife and that I was desperate. He was a nice older guy, friendly and chatty. I could probably talk him into helping if I had any energy left. While we chatted, I gave him my phone number and the name of my motel, then left. I slept the rest of the morning and into the afternoon. During my sleep, I found Alice. I was looking for her, and then, there she was, standing in front of a strange building I knew well, waiting for me. We kissed. I held her, and I cried and cried. I couldn't stop sobbing while I held her tightly, afraid she'd disappear. Then something started knocking, and we both looked to see what it was. That's when I came to enough to realize it was the door. Who could it be? Probably some of Richard's friends come to kick me out of town. Hold on, I'm coming. I wiped my eyes as I walked to the door. It was Eleanor Friedman's lawyer. Of course, a very polite older man. He told me she could not see me and I should leave her alone. I kept wiping my face as he spoke. Finish up, sir, so I can go back to sleep. Back into the dream where I found my wife. You're a part of the world that just won't let me see her. Blah, 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 go back home. Then, as he was leaving, he slipped me something. A note with instructions to walk to the coffee shop at the corner and head out the back door to a waiting car. I felt a chill. What had Mickey said about being paranoid? In the car was Eleanor Friedman, of course. Looking back, everything felt like it was meant to be. Here was Eleanor Friedman, a real woman I could actually see. Even sitting in the driver's seat, she was tall, and it was easy to imagine her as someone important, with her confident look and stylish appearance. She began speaking right away. Mr. Jekyll, I have to be quick. I'm unable to share anything about Richard Moriarty due to a legal agreement, and there's more. He mentioned you were coming, so he's keeping an eye on you. I felt a chill. His people are everywhere. I can't be sure. He called me directly and warned that my past is still part of my life. It would be unfortunate for it to affect my future. She shook her head. He used to be very charming, but now he speaks in a way that feels rather harsh. Will he always threaten you? It's not exactly that. My husband knows I used to dance, and a few friends do too. I didn't do anything wrong, but I wouldn't want everyone in the medical field or my community to know all the details. I just cannot be caught talking to you. Is there anything you can share? I'm really sorry for you, and especially for your wife. I felt like giving up. I would have, but then Mickey called a couple of days later. Quick, Henry. They are going to the opening event at the Barracuda Casino. Why didn't you tell me sooner? You've got about 45 minutes. I rushed over just as Richard's limo pulled up, pushing through the crowd toward the red carpet. Then I saw them. She was stunning in a sleek black dress with long gloves that sparkled. It was clear she was very thin from a distance. She walked up the steps with Richard, leaning close to him, her head almost on his shoulder as he held her waist. Alice! Alice! She glanced up and hesitated. She looked my way, but I was too far back. I struggled to get closer, but suddenly I was surrounded by security personnel, led by Richard's polite young men. I'm sorry, sir, but we need you to come with us. Everyone was watching me, likely thinking I was a troublemaker. I felt desperate. I wanted to see Alice again, but they took me away as she and Richard entered the casino. Alice! They pulled me far back and kept me in a small room for about an hour while I shouted. Then they just let me go. No warnings, nothing. That was it. Richard called again that evening. I listened to the long voicemail when I got home. Henry, 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 I must admit I'm impressed with your determination tracking us, going all the way to Sacramento. Most people would have given up by now. You know she's just a person. I could hear the bustle of the casino in the background. He had called from inside while I was detained in that little room. Alice is getting ready for me right now, as they say. She always looks lovely for me. Did you enjoy your little glimpse? I have her on a new routine. She must make herself beautiful every day. Sometimes Alice would skip shaving her legs, and I'd feel a bit of stubble when I'd touch her leg. It was one of those little things you overlook after years together. Oh, that was just my joke, Henry, Richard said, his voice dripping with arrogance. I didn't mean to surprise you. I just guessed that after 10 or 12 years of marriage, things get a bit routine, don't they? He paused. But I make sure things stay sharp with her. She has a routine, too. She keeps herself prepared and in line, and I'm strict about it. There are rewards for following the rules, of course, and consequences when she doesn't, he added, chuckling with satisfaction. She's grateful, Henry. She actually appreciates the structure I give her. Then he went on about how fit and lean she was. She's got no extra weight, Henry. She eats well and exercises regularly. I keep an eye on her diet. It's strict, but it works." He laughed again, a sound that still haunts me, dripping with that strange satisfaction. "And when she slips up, I know, and we address it accordingly." I couldn't take it. His words weren't just about Alice. They were a game meant to taunt me as well. This was about getting under my skin, and he was enjoying every second of it. I couldn't help but respond, despite knowing he wanted just that. "Richard, so this is all control, isn't it?" I challenged. "It's what I thought. You keep her with you through fear." He answered the call again as if he'd been waiting. "Control, yes, but not brutality, Henry. If you think discipline means harshness, you don't understand a thing. Discipline with purpose builds trust, even love. She chose me, remember? You're out of your mind. You admit to hurting her," I snapped. "You wouldn't understand, Henry," he said calmly. "Yes, sometimes it's difficult, but she trusts the process. She sees that it all fits together, part of a greater plan." "You're insane! What are you doing to her?" "Just helping her grow, Henry," he said, his tone taunting. My anger boiled over. "You're not getting away with this," I spat. "I'm telling the police everything." "Ah, Henry," he laughed, mocking me. "You always react just as I expect. But you know, they are all just daydreams. They are what people wish for or discover they want. Everything. And I don't even have to create them myself." "You come up with ideas pretty well," I said, trying to sound a bit sarcastic. "Ha, you poor thing. Don't you realize where these come from? Have you heard about those intense themes in some novels? Many educated women read them and feel excited. I find more online than I could ever act out, much worse things. That's not real life." Let me finish. Even though many website creators don't seem to have much education. Anyway, I have enough material from real life. "Let me talk to her." He seemed a bit frustrated again. "Let's change the subject. You could use some knowledge. Your parents were English, right? Didn't they admire Queen Elizabeth, the first one? The Virgin Queen? Good Queen Bess? A role model for women in power? I think that's why they named your sister Elizabeth and you Henry. What's your point? Do you know what Sweet Lizzie had her people do with troublemakers? She had them punished in terrible ways. Have you ever heard of people being harmed in awful manners? Stop talking like that. She had them executed in very harsh sentences. Do you know what that means? First, you're hung for a while to struggle. Then they take you down and stretch you out. This is all in front of large crowds, you know." Richard was getting more animated as he spoke. "They would perform cruel acts on the bodies. It was designed to shock and frighten everyone watching." Enough. "And then how she dealt with them. Be quiet! She had them hanged and split apart. Do you know what that involves? First, you struggle. Then they would take you down and expose you. All of this was before cheering crowds. They would harm your body in a way to create fear. Then, when you were still conscious, they would do horrible things to ensure they remembered. You need to be mostly gone by then because they would make an example of you. You're ridiculous." "But they weren't finished. Bodies were displayed. Your head would go on a stake, and the rest of you would be hung up as a warning for others. That's what the good Queen Bess did." "That's nonsense." It's true, dear Henry." Now he was shouting into the phone, but then took a deep breath to calm down. "One thing you should know about me is I speak the truth. In fact, Bessie wanted to make the punishments worse, to make them even more dreadful. But her advisors said the harsh punishments were enough, if done right." This time I didn't respond at all. "You think she didn't watch it and feel excited?" Richard's words were dark and unsettling as he talked about indulging in other people's hidden desires. "People want things beyond what I give them," he said with a smug tone. "What are you doing to Alice?" I asked, my patience thin. He replied coolly, "Nothing cruel if that's what you're wondering. Right now, I'm taking her to Cannes and then to my private resort. I'd suggest you don't try to follow." I was left on edge, but I didn't expect to hear from him again so soon. 10 days later, he sent an email with several photo attachments, each labeled with Alice's name and a number. I hesitated, but opened the first one, Alice 1, JPG. In the image, Alice was on a beach with Richard, laughing. They looked casual, though I couldn't ignore the way he seemed to dominate the scene. In other photos, they were having dinner in a large dining hall, surrounded by people who seemed oddly uninhibited, laughing and enjoying themselves. As I scrolled through, the pictures grew increasingly personal. Alice appeared in a hut, her expression unreadable. The series of images made it clear that she was caught up in his world. Each photo seemed designed to provoke a reaction from me, a reminder of the control he felt he had. I wanted to stop looking, to delete the photos altogether, but Richard had made sure these images were more than just pictures, they were a message. His intention was clear. He wanted me to feel powerless. For a brief moment, I thought about erasing everything, wiping out all traces of this intrusion into my life. But I knew that wouldn't be the end of it. The thought of ignoring it vanished, and I clicked on the image. This last photo was indeed the worst. Alice was tied to a bed, appearing vulnerable and restrained. Around her stood several men, none of them Richard. They were all gathered in a disturbing scene, one that made my stomach turn. Alice's expression was hard to read. Her eyes were wide, and she seemed to be saying something, though I couldn't tell what. And then I noticed another unsettling detail. Across her skin was a message written in red marker. "Hello, Henry. Wish you were here." That night, I knew I would dream again. I'd had nights without dreams of her recently, maybe I'd been starting to move on. But now, with these images, it was impossible to shake the thoughts that haunted me. They followed me, flashing in my mind when I closed my eyes, catching me off guard. I couldn't get away from the twisted visions Richard had planted. Sleep brought no escape, only more nightmares. Finally, a deep anger rose within me. It wasn't the kind of anger that caused me to lose my senses, but a focused rage. I knew what I needed to do. Richard had drained my life, taken everything meaningful from me, leaving me with nothing but bitterness and loss. The thought of confronting him filled me with a fierce determination. But I knew I had to be careful. Richard always seemed one step ahead, as if he had a constant eye on my every move. How did he know where I'd go or who I'd talk to? I suspected he was having me watched. My friend Mickey suggested as much, though I began to wonder if even Mickey could be trusted. Maybe Richard had gotten to him as well. Determined to break free from this shadow, I took steps to make sure my privacy was intact. I hired a discreet investigator to check for any tracking or listening devices, determined to be methodical and careful. My house, car, and phone. I discovered something surprising. There was a listening device on my car and another on my landline. That was it. No hidden cameras or microphones, although I was warned about cell phones in general. Those two items were probably enough. They weren't even very costly. While speaking to the investigator, I had a strange thought. There were 2 days until Richard and Alice would return to Las Vegas. I needed to act quickly. I went out my back door and walked 3 blocks to buy a used car for $1,000 in cash, thanks to the weekly advertiser. I drove it to City Hall, claiming that my trash bin had been damaged. Then I went to a pawn shop and bought an old badge that looked official. It was more serious looking than the badges used today. Step by step, I followed my plan. I put on a baseball cap and drove the new car past Richard's home a few times, looking for ways in. I went to a shooting range and practiced with my gun for an hour. Every time I hit the target, I imagined it was Richard. So far, so good. I thought about how I would let him know who I was. It was a pity they didn't have different target shapes. I drove the used car to Palm Springs, to a parking lot near a resort hotel where I parked it. Within an hour, I had bought another inexpensive car. I drove that one back to Las Vegas and stored it in a lot not far from my home. I was delighted as I drove back. Now came the distraction. I made a reservation at the resort hotel and then called Mickey. "Sorry, Mickey. I wanted you to keep an eye on Richard and Alice, but I needed a break from everything." He understood. I drove my car, which had the devices, to Palm Springs. On the way, I kept imagining Alice. When I arrived at the hotel, I went to my room and turned on the TV. Then I walked down the stairs to a back entrance, picked up the used car, and left. It was a long drive back to Vegas, slowed by a traffic accident. At one point, I thought I might be late, but everything turned out fine. Step by step, I just had to stick to my plan. It would work. Richard thought he was careful and had good security. I guess he did. But people often overlook their defenses. That's why airport security sometimes doesn't catch everything. There was a back way into Richard's estate, with dumpsters and a gate that the staff kept open for easy access. That meant I could get in without causing a scene. I didn't mind how I entered, I just wanted to increase my chances of success. There might have been security cameras, so I knew I was taking a risk. While things were quiet, I thought about my plan. If anyone caught me, I could show my badge and say I was working for the city. Now, looking back, it seemed foolish. Did Henry really think no one would recognize him? I parked my car close to the estate and walked toward the dumpster, pretending I was confident. I found some bushes away from the sidewalk and sat down to wait for night. I could tell when the two of them arrived because of the noise they made. It lasted about an hour, and when most of the staff started to leave, I slipped in through a side door. I hid in a closet and waited until things got quiet. Then I took a deep breath and walked down the hall to Richard's favorite room. I knew this house better than anyone, and I was determined to find him. When I entered the den with my weapon ready, I found Richard sitting alone. Richard looked the same as always, dressed in his sleeves rolled up. By the time he noticed me, it was too late for him to do anything but sit in his chair and stare at the gun calmly. "I liked the photos, Richard. Now we're going to do this my way. Bring Alice out and no one will get hurt. I just want to talk." It wasn't entirely true, but I hoped it would get her to come. We could have a conversation before I made my move. He kept his eyes on the gun. "You don't want to do this, Henry. Just go and I won't say anything. You have to count to 10. I felt silly, like I was in a movie, but it was my only way to stay in control. 1, Henry. 2. Okay. 3. Armand will get her. It'll only take a minute. That's your only time." Soon, a young man named Armand walked into the room. When he saw me, he froze, eyes wide. "Armand, please get Miss Alice. Mr. Henry wants to speak with her." Armand quickly stepped back and hurried down the hall. In the quiet that followed, Richard asked, "Would you like to sit?" "Be quiet. We can solve this peacefully." I shot beside his leg, breaking a vase. A voice from down the hall shouted, "Mr. Richard!" "It's all right, Armand. Just bring Miss Alice quickly." Richard glanced at the gun once more. "Are you thinking about how many shots I have left? This gun has more than one." "Yes, I'm aware." His voice stayed calm. "I would guess at least 9 more." I didn't reply. Things were moving too quickly now. There were sounds in the hallway, people rushing, and Armand's voice speaking in broken English with Alice asking questions. I turned to look at the doorway, and Richard tilted his head like a curious bird. Just then, Alice and Armand stumbled into the room, Armand tugging her along. They resembled 2 comical characters hurrying at someone's call. This might have been funny if I hadn't been feeling so frustrated and worried about them both. The weight of the gun in my hand made my thoughts race. I glanced back and forth between Richard and Alice. "Henry?" Alice called, clearly unsure of the situation since Armand hadn't told her about me. As I absorbed this, 2 large young men approached and gently knocked me to the floor, taking the gun from my hands and holding me down. It took a moment for me to realize what had happened. With these strong men holding my arms, I could see Alice moving toward Richard, her gaze flicking between us. She was close enough to touch him, resting her fingers on his arm. When she looked up at his face, it hit me this was the answer I had come for. I felt frustrated that I had lost the gun so easily, but I knew it would take me a little while to understand everything. Richard took control of the situation. "Don't harm him, but keep the gun away. He can't be trusted right now." Finally, I had a chance to really look at Alice. We exchanged glances as I was pulled back to my feet. She tried to hold my gaze but kept looking away, then back again. She wore a simple dress that hugged her figure. I could see her arms and legs, and she seemed healthier than I had pictured her in my mind. My previous thoughts about her being frail were mistaken. She was fit and vibrant, looking nothing like the images I had imagined. "Alice, this is Henry. Henry, meet Alice. You two have finally met." Richard looked pleased. Had he really worried about me with the gun? "Henry is eager to hear you say, in your own words, that you've chosen to be with me now. We can't delay this any longer, so you'll just have to tell him the truth." Then I noticed something on Alice's wrists, faint red marks. It seemed Richard hadn't been completely truthful. He had told part of the truth. Alice was fidgeting. I thought she might stay silent, but Richard waited patiently. He looked at her like she was a project of his just about to show off her skills. Finally, she spoke. "Oh, Henry," she began. "That was a terrible start. It had been a joke between us." "Oh, Henry. I was her favorite candy, the one she enjoyed slowly. How long ago was that?" It wasn't funny now, just a sign that she didn't know what to say. Another awkward moment. Why did you come here? I'm not coming back. I'm sorry for hurting you, but it's over. You have to move on, Henry. It's really over. Richard nodded at me. It was my turn to talk. Why? Why did I leave? Yes. You said you loved me, and why him? You disliked him. How could you go to him? How did he change your mind? Please explain. Alice looked at Richard, then back at me. She started to speak, then finally said, "It's too complicated. I can't explain everything. I felt trapped. I wasn't happy. Richard makes me happy." There was nothing to say to that. I didn't make her happy. What could I say? We hadn't made each other happy for a long time. It seemed Richard made her feel complete. It was as if he could meet all her needs. How long? What do you mean? When did it start? After New Year's. He had been honest, right? I didn't argue with her. It fell silent again, and Richard stepped in, grinning widely. "It's just like I told you, Henry. I gave her what she needed, and she chose me. Now she's with me. Tell him, Alice." Alice looked down at the floor. She hesitated. She really didn't want to say more. "Richard is right, Henry. He's full of life. He takes charge, and we make each other happy." I felt anger rise up. I said, "I wish things had been different." I said it, but I didn't mean it with all my strength. It was done. That last tiny hope was gone. Richard's smirk became a big grin. "Henry still loves you. He'll always hope for you. You need to end this, Alice. Look him in the eye and tell him. Show him how proud you are to be with me." Something was shifting. Alice turned to look at me and spoke softly. "It's true, Henry. I'm with Richard. I'm sorry." Richard quickly interrupted her. "Let me show you, Henry. Alice, please share your feelings with us." She turned to him, speaking softly and looking at me a few times. "Richard, please, not in front of him." In a way, it felt almost innocent. She didn't want me to hear what she said, and her voice was calm but tense. Alice seemed almost hesitant, like she was trying to warn him with her eyes. "Alice, you'll do as I say, or you're free to leave," Richard said firmly. The words seemed to hit her hard, and she looked as if she'd been stung. "Please, Richard," she pleaded softly. "I've done everything you asked. I'll do anything for you, just not in front of him." She held her hands up in a quiet, desperate gesture. "It's simple, Alice. Either you do as I say or you don't. I won't repeat myself." I could feel the weight of her decision, knowing she would go along with it. She would do what he asked, and I watched as she took a steadying breath, lowered her head, and seemed to give in. My heart sank, seeing her in this moment. It was hard to process everything, my emotions a mix of anger, resentment, and disbelief. Her expression was blank, resigned to following Richard's commands. Richard reached out and touched her shoulder, his hand resting there with a kind of authority that made my stomach turn. "Now, let's show Henry what you've learned," he said, his tone calm but controlling. "I want to see how well you follow my instructions." Alice didn't move right away, and the room fell silent, the tension thick between us. She looked toward me once, briefly, as if searching for something, maybe reassurance, or maybe a final sense of understanding. Then she turned back to Richard, her expression unreadable, and lowered herself to the floor. The whole scene played out like it was in slow motion, and I felt trapped, helpless to change anything. It was as if the world had stopped around us, everything frozen, with all eyes on this one painful moment. The room was quiet, an odd stillness that only added to the tension around us. Alice knelt on the floor, her posture looking almost reverent, as if she were carrying out some ritual with focused devotion. Richard's tone, though calm, had an edge of authority as he encouraged her actions, as if guiding her through steps he had repeated many times before. "Very good, Alice," Richard said, his voice steady, almost paternal in a way that felt unsettling. Alice followed his words, fumbling a bit as she tried to adjust. There was a hesitation in her movements, but she continued, seemingly accustomed to obeying his commands. She paused, glancing up at him as if awaiting further instruction. Richard placed a hand gently on her shoulder, his gaze steady but expectant. "Show your dedication," he prompted quietly. With a deep breath, Alice composed herself, her actions a mix of practiced familiarity and focus. Richard watched her, his expression calm, occasionally giving her guidance to move slower or with more care. It was clear that he expected patience and precision in every step she took. After a while, Richard turned to me as if sharing a lesson. "You see, Henry, this is how she shows her loyalty," he said, his tone filled with pride. "It takes time and training for someone to understand how to be truly attentive, especially after a long day when all you need is someone there." Alice continued, her focus unwavering, following each instruction with an almost ritualistic diligence. At one point, Richard leaned back with a contented sigh, as though savoring the moment he had orchestrated so carefully. "Henry," Richard said, "you're witnessing something few others would ever understand. A true dedication." He nodded toward Alice, who was still kneeling, her eyes lowered in concentration, waiting for his approval to continue. The tension in the room was palpable, but Richard seemed unbothered, almost indifferent. To him, this was an everyday ritual, and to Alice, it was a duty she had taken on without question. The atmosphere in the room was tense, with an unsettling calmness among everyone present. Richard seemed confident and completely in control, directing Alice as if this was just a routine they both knew well. "Get ready," Richard said, his tone firm yet calm. Alice adjusted herself, taking a deep breath and preparing to follow his lead. There was a sense of obedience in her actions, as though she knew exactly what he expected from her. Richard gave her brief instructions, guiding her with short, deliberate phrases. "Steady, Alice," he said, pausing occasionally to let her catch up. He moved with a practiced ease, showing neither hesitation nor hurry. As they continued, Richard occasionally glanced in my direction, as though sharing some hidden insight. "Henry, you see?" he said with a certain pride. "This is what dedication looks like, refined and controlled." Alice maintained her focus, her movements precise and careful. Richard continued with a steady rhythm, never rushing, as if teaching some kind of lesson through his actions. There was a distant satisfaction in his eyes as he looked back at me. "Patience, Henry," he murmured, watching Alice. "True dedication requires patience. When you've shaped someone to understand what you need, it's worth it." After a while, Alice, exhausted but determined, continued to follow his instructions, occasionally catching her breath. Richard guided her movements, still in complete control, giving her a brief pause to compose herself before continuing. "Almost done, Alice," he finally said, his voice softening. He watched her with a faint smile of approval. The calm in the room felt almost surreal, given the unusual situation, yet everyone remained composed, as if it were just another day. Alice leaned against him, clearly drained, catching her breath as she steadied herself. Richard looked down at her with a satisfied expression, murmuring something too low for me to hear. It struck me how strangely calm everyone was, as if they'd gone through this scene many times before. The silence was heavy, each of us lost in our own thoughts as the moment drew to a close. I was filled with a mix of anger, desire, sadness, and confusion, but I couldn't move. My supervisors looked serious. Armand stood with his arms crossed, looking down at Alice with a hint of annoyance. Alice sat back on her heels, breathing heavily. And Richard? He straightened his clothes, retucking his shirt and getting himself together as if he were preparing to leave a formal meeting. "Well, there you have it, Henry." His voice returned to its loud tone. "This is how a well-trained woman shows her commitment. Quite a show, don't you think?" I started to respond, but he interrupted me. "There's just one more thing, Henry." I thought he was about to hurt her, but no. "I see you're still interested in her, I get it, but I don't want her to come between us. So, to move forward, I'm giving her back to you as a gift. Enjoy her." Alice's eyes widened. The room fell silent for a moment. "What?" Alice almost yelled. "What are you talking about, Richard? Don't joke like that. It's not funny." She tried to laugh as if to dismiss it. "No joke, Alice. It's done. You're going back to Henry." He was calm and composed. "Richard, no. You can't mean it." "It's time, Alice. We had our fun." "Richard, no. I've done everything for you. Everything. And in return, you received more than you could have imagined. It was a fair deal. I gave up everything for you." She looked around the room, shaking her head. She was wiping her face nervously. "My job. My future. Richard. Those were your choices. Time to return to the real world, dear." "No!" She lunged at him from her position, but he pushed her away gently. Armand, can you get some people to help Miss Alice? Richard! Her voice was high-pitched, frantic, unable to understand. Give her some new clothes and make sure she leaves with Mr. Henry. Suddenly, 3 or 4 people, men and women, entered to take Alice away. They had to hold her arms, 2 on each side, because she was struggling so much. She was crying and shouting, "Richard, no!" repeatedly. She had been completely caught off guard. It might seem strange, but I hadn't been surprised. I suspected from the moment he had her change that he was nearly done with her. This was the first time I was able to predict his actions. Of course, he was letting her go. He had taken what he wanted, and there were many others who could take her place. She hadn't seen it coming because, aside from her actions, she hadn't been very perceptive. As they began to pull her away, he announced, "This is unacceptable behavior. From now on, Miss Alice isn't welcome here." "Richard?" I tried to speak loudly to him. "Yes. There's just one other thing. I don't want her anymore. I won't take her back." I thought about how I had come here with angry ideas and felt let down that nothing happened. Richard smiled a big, friendly smile. "And after all my hard work training her, well, that's your choice." He walked towards the hallway. You could still hear Alice crying and struggling. "Armand, give Miss Alice some money and take her to a hotel. She won't be leaving with Mr. Henry." He looked at the bigger man still holding me. "George, we need to improve our security. And once Mr. Henry is gone, you can give him back his pistol. But Henry, don't ever come back or I'll complain." As they pulled me away, his voice called out one last time, "No hard feelings." I wasn't sure if he meant my feelings or his. "Pleased to meet you. Hope you guess my name, but what's puzzling you is the nature of my game." Richard's game was twisted. He wanted to hurt both of them, individually and together. Why do we do these things? It's hard to say. He chose to seduce her, break their bond, leave her feeling embarrassed and alone. He did it all skillfully and even enjoyed taking control. Though I disliked him, I had to recognize his cleverness. It was a rare talent. I felt defeated. Thank you for watching. Catch the next part on our new YouTube channel, linked below. Don't forget to subscribe for more captivating stories.